Hello, everyone, and welcome back to 7 Studio Avenue. I am joined today by Jalen,
What's up?
Bryon,
Hey guys.
Logan,
Hello.
and myself. It is with a heavy heart that I say that this will be the final episode of 7 Studio Ave.
We're in the end game now, guys.
We're going to go out on a high note, and we're going to do whatever it takes to break down Avengers Endgame. So, we're going to start non-spoilers, then go into spoilers. We'll make it very clear when we get to spoilers, because you do not want this movie spoiled. So, first thoughts.
I think a lot of the reviews use this term. I think I would say epic. That's definitely a good. I'd also say it's a nerd's dream come true.
I would have to agree.
I believe that this is like Marvel at this point in the movie, in movies, has outdone itself once it hits this point. Like it reached a new pinnacle. It reached like higher expectations for movies to come in regards to superheroes.
Yeah, it's like the culmination of 22 of these movies, and it's masterfully well done, and I don't know how you're supposed to top this.
Yeah, it's definitely like, it felt like a love letter to fans. I don't want to give the word fan service because that's usually seen with like a negative connotation, but this movie has a lot of little moments that are just like rewards for people who have been on this journey for the past 10 years, who have waited to the end of the credits. It's people who've paid attention to the little lines, the little nuances that make these movies so phenomenal, and this climax is just full of them.
So I would say I recommend anyone to go watch this, whether you're a huge Marvel fan or not. You'll enjoy it if whether you're a huge fan or not. However, if you are like a Marvel fanboy or fangirl and you watched all 22 movies, then this is going to be very special. I said to Logan after we had seen it yesterday that its biggest weakness is also its biggest strength, in my opinion. I think its weakness is that it relies heavily on all the other movies versus standing alone by itself. However, I think that's also its biggest strength because I think that's what makes it special and amazing in so many ways.
Right. We should point out that we all saw this together. And just being in the theater, it was more than a movie. It was an event.
Yeah,
There was such like a great energy. You could tell just everyone was so excited, except for the part when like it was almost in 3D.
Oh,
There was a point during the trailers when we were instructed to put on our 3D glasses, and literally like half a dozen people jumped up and ran out the theater. It was like almost a panic.
yeah, and they almost made us watch all the previews again.
Yeah.
That it was like how long was it? Like a 20-minute delay?
Maybe, 20, 30 minutes.
Yeah.
But I would say that it was worth the wait.
It definitely was. It was worth the 10-year wait is what it was.
Yeah. So, I didn't think there was a single second of this movie that wasn't absolutely fantastic.
I would
Yeah.
agree with that.
Yeah, I think the whole movie was great.
Yeah. Do you guys want to get into spoilers?
Yeah, why don't we jump
So, this is your spoiler warning. There is so much stuff in this movie that if someone were to have told me a day ago before I'd seen it, I think I would have actually killed them. There's so many things in this movie that I would not want spoiled, and we're going to be talking about them for the next like hour or so. So, turn back now if you have not seen it. That being said, guys, we were right about so many things.
Oh, yes, we were. I said we start at the beginning, and then we go from there.
Yeah.
So,
I just want to touch about all the things we were right about.
yeah.
Just kind of toot our own horn. We talked about the young Thanos theory, that Thanos would be the villain of the film, but not the Thanos we're familiar with. Because the Thanos we're familiar with gets decapitated within the first 10 minutes.
Right.
I felt that was a bit jarring, but I loved it.
Yeah, I thought it was good. Thor saying, and they asked him what he was doing. He said, I'm going for the head." I think that's definitely, it was good. It was comedic, but also serious at the same time. It showed they weren't messing around. It started the film off in a very serious way. Like, you could see how it affected all the different Avengers and how some were more angry, some were more distraught. It was very interesting. So,
Right, and that young Thanos, he seems a bit more intense than like the one we're used to. Because Infinity War, since he has the stones, he's kind of laid back.
yeah,
there are
he's
times
complacent,
where he gets,
yeah.
There's times where he gets angry, but he like holds him. It's almost like he holds himself in a higher light.
I think because he has the stones at that point, so he knows that he's more powerful than
Right.
everybody else.
He messes around a little bit more in Infinity War, but in this one, when he's fighting, he doesn't mess around at all. He's quick, he's efficient, he goes for the kill.
He's got like a. Do you know what his double-bladed sword reminded me of, Jalen?
What?
Something we've talked about on the show before, from Star Wars Rebels.
Oh,
There's a bit
Yeah.
where it like spins around like a helicopter.
yeah. Oh man,
And
if
it just
you're a Star Wars
reminded me
fan,
of this
Inquisitors,
this
yeah.
dumb thing that they did in Star Wars Rebels, but that was so cool how he used it to chip away at Captain America's shield.
Yeah.
That was cool. It was cool how he used it to deflect the beams of coming from Iron Man as well.
He was definitely more combative in this movie than we've seen before.
He was, in my opinion, because he wasn't messing around. He seemed more of a threat to me than he did. Like, I feel like in Infinity War, when they're facing him, they know he's got a cocky, confident mindset, so they can try to beat him with that. But in this movie, he wasn't like that at all. He saw a moment that he wasn't expecting before. There was basically, he seems like someone who plans very thoroughly for everything, and this had nothing to do with the plan he had set for the next few years going forth. So when he saw this opportunity, he knew he had to jump on it right away, and you could feel his desperation and eagerness to get a hold of the Infinity Gauntlet. Or it's not necessarily the Infinity Gauntlet, but the Infinity Stones.
Right, and just another point of contrast is Thanos has that specific line in Infinity War when he's talking about his genocide, how it would be random and fair, like nothing personal. And he talks in this one about how his conquests before were never personal, but Earth has been such a thorn in his side that he's going to enjoy destroying it.
Yeah, you see his villain tendencies come out a little bit more when he's backed into a corner in this movie.
So we were right about young Thanos. Jalen, you and I were right about Captain Marvel saving Tony and Nebula.
Yeah, I was going to say that,
retrieving them from space.
They did that right away. That was quick.
Logan, I'm sure you appreciate how that was done in like 2 minutes.
Yeah, they just got it out the way, and we got all our characters back together again, which I enjoyed.
It was
I
still
enjoyed that as well, yeah.
emotional and well executed, but it wasn't like unnecessarily drawn out.
Interesting that they were very particular about the time they would save, because essentially the end credit scene for Captain Marvel was basically the first scene of Avengers Endgame.
Right.
I thought that was interesting that they would. That makes that, in my opinion, that end credit scene one of the most crucial end credit scenes in all of the MCU, because I think if you don't see that scene and then you go to see Endgame, you're going to be a little confused about, like, wait, what? Like, what happened?
Those people deserve to be confused. If you don't stay to the end of the credits, you're not a true fan. There, I said it. Fight me. Okay, so also, this was probably one of my standout moments. One of the things that I was hoping to see, but in the back of my mind is like, they're probably not going to do this. Captain America wielding Mjolnir.
Oh, that was probably the best thing I've ever seen in my
in my
entire
That was just so satisfying.
That I couldn't believe it when I first saw it. I was like, wait, what?
Like, to believe that, like, Mjolnir was, like, thrown as Thor and Thanos was fighting, and I was like, the only person that could have picked this up in my mind was Captain America.
To me, a lot of the final scene, the final fight of this movie felt like if you had some like crazy fan write a fan fiction about all these crazy things happening in one big battle, and then they just brought it to the big screen. That's how it felt to me for some of it, and I loved it. I thought it was amazing.
Jeremy Johns on YouTube said it felt like the final battle of Ready Player One, but 1,000 times better.
Oh, I agree.
And I'd have to agree. It's seeing all your favorite characters against all the villains in this just epic showdown.
I said after the movie to my co-host that I believe it reminded me a lot of the scene from Justice League that we got back, was that 2017?
Yeah.
And Now, obviously, this was done much, much better, but it reminded me in the sense that you had all these different groups as well as the more popular characters fighting within this huge battle against this big bad. But yeah, Avengers did one of the in terms of like those big battles where it's just two huge armies rushing at each other. In cinema history, I think this may be the best, in my opinion. Like it can't beat Narnia, it can't beat like Lord of the Rings, any of that. This one is number one.
Yeah. So, one of the things that really sort of sets that up is Thor retrieving Mjolnir from the past. Mm-hmm. As soon as he did that, I'm thinking like, okay, this could happen. And then we see him dual wielding Stormbreaker and Mjolnir. I'm like, oh, they're probably just going to do with that. But no, Cap wields Mjolnir, and it's just so great.
Especially when he wields it with both the shield and Mjolnir, and the combination.
Yeah, he gets like a few combo hits.
Was amazing.
I also love the shot of right when Thanos has like summoned his army, and you see it standing behind him, and it's like a wide shot of Thanos' army versus Captain America as like the sun is setting. And it's just like,
yeah, it's really good.
I want that as a wall-size poster because it looks like a goddamn Renaissance painting.
That shot was incredible. That was amazing. The shot of all the portals opening up and all of the allies, or basically all the Avengers coming out, that was amazing as well.
I also love that tracking shot of Valkyrie on the flying horse gutting a Leviathan. It like follows her as she's going down it, and it's just. Like,
I love the shot of Ant-Man in his like giant form and just rushing at the I don't know what is it called again?
Leviathan.
That's a Leviathan. Yeah, and just punching it. That was amazing.
Oh, yeah.
They were originally called when they were making Avengers, they were called Jumbos, but Josh Whedon thought that'd like look weird on the box of a toy, so they came up with Leviathan.
My jaw is dropped for the last like 30 minutes to an hour of the film. Like that, it was just.
There's just so much.
And then and then Pepper Potts shows up and. As well as the Wasp shows up, and just like
everybody,
everyone. I didn't expect like the whole MCU to show up. Yeah. I expected the Avengers to show up, not all the sorcerers. It was crazy to me. Like, oh man,
everyone's there except Daredevil. Sorry, Daredevil. Daredevil wouldn't have been much help in that fight anyway.
Jarvis was in it though from Agent Carter.
Yeah, they've got the same actor from Agent Carter playing Jarvis. That was a nice little touch. So, we can sort of use Jarvis as our segue point into the time travel. What do you guys think of that?
I honestly think it was probably the best part of the movie, other than the final fight. Specifically the time travel back to 2012 and the attack on New York. The stuff was really great.
Yeah,
I thought it was really cool to see the aspect of Doctor Strange and how that weaved into that story. Right. How the Ancient One was she was defending the Sanctum from the Chitauri. That was cool. And then her referencing of him and like how she knew about him 5 years in advance. That was really cool.
Mm-hmm. Right, because that also like plays into what the Ancient One would be doing. She'd be defending the Sanctuary. Because in her mind, even if all of New York City is destroyed, so long as the Sanctum is safe, then the dimension is safe from Dormammu.
Right.
So that makes sense with her character. That a lot of people complained after Doctor Strange, like, oh, where was Wong or the Ancient One during the Avengers? It's like they were doing what their priority was.
Right.
And I also like how she like knocks Bruce Banner out of his Hulk body, and it's just him.
Oh, and he's in the astral plane, and they're just talking.
Do you guys want to talk about Professor Hulk?
Yeah,
I found it incredibly jarring.
It was weird when it first happened, and I was just like, because it's a hard cut to just like Professor Hulk, and it was jarring, but I really liked it.
I liked it. The only problem is I was expecting to see more of like the development of how it gets to that. I was kind of bummed not to see that.
Yeah. They saved time by just jumping.
Yeah, they just jump right to it. But other than that, it was fine. Yeah.
One of the things I love about Endgame is even though we predicted so much of this stuff, there's still so much unexpected. Like, there's one shot that shows Professor Hulk and Rocket in the back of a truck as a folksy song plays, and it's just like, I never thought I would see this in Endgame.
Yeah.
It's just, this is so absurd and ridiculous, and I love every second of it.
Yeah, in the last big fight especially, and throughout the whole movie, it this movie felt to me more like I was reading a comic than any of the others because there were so many characters. And in the comics, they have all the characters and they interact on a regular basis. So to see characters like just see so many different and such a huge variety of characters interacting, especially during that final fight, it was really it was a dream come true, like I said, for any nerd out there, really.
And going back to how they use time travel, it really is sort of like we can go back and visit our Marvel's greatest hit sort of thing. Like, we can see the Battle of New York from a different angle. I particularly really like the Cap versus Cap fight.
That's really good.
Yeah.
There's a moment in it that just reminds me of Toy Story 2 when Buzz meets, like, the new Buzz, and he's still in that, like, Space Ranger mindset, and he's like, God, was I ever this naive?
Yeah.
There's a point where Cap's fighting Cap, and old Cap's like, I can do this all day. And our Cap's just like, I know.
And then in a similar sequence during that time frame of the movie, I loved the elevator scene.
Yeah,
So
there's just
that was great.
shot for shot. Even the sound effect of the elevator door opening,
Yeah,
it's the exact same
yeah.
sound effect.
Of the elevator scene in The Winter Soldier is what we're referencing.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like everyone in the theater is wondering, are we going to get to see that again or what? And I think they did a great job with what they did. Basically, Captain America. I mean, if you're listening to this review, you've probably seen the movie, but you saw that Captain America says "Hail Hydra" to gain their trust.
And
That
you
was
you
very
see
funny.
Jasper Sitwell just be like, oh.
Yeah.
There's a moment on his face where you're just like, what is going on?
He's like, clearly I don't know everything. That was really cool, as well as you could even make an argument that it was a little Easter egg as well for the comics, because there's a relatively
Hydra,
relatively current comic where Captain America is supposedly a Hydra sleeper agent.
I think the two biggest things that stood out for me in this scene or this part of the movie, were when we got to see Alexander Pierce.
Yeah, and
Robert Redford.
Because we talked about this yesterday, but Robert Redford has since retired from acting.
Yeah, so I guess they might have got him right before that happened, or they just paid him a lot of money to come back.
But this does sort of add to the continuity of the MCU, because this means in the original timeline, the Scepter was procured by Alexander Pierce and Strike, which explains why it's in Baron Strucker's hands, why it's in Hydra's hands by the time of Avengers Age of Ultron. So it's able to go back and sort of, again, put more of that connective tissue that makes the universe great.
Right. And the other thing I was just going to say, my second point, was that I really like the relationship between Tony and Scott. I think was very interesting, and them fighting and planning along together was really interesting.
The joke about Captain America's ass was pretty funny.
Yeah.
No.
It's like, this is fun. Fate of the world, still having fun.
Yeah, it's probably one of the hardest times I've laughed in a Marvel movie, and I still find it really funny.
Yeah, that was definitely a really good joke. Marvel, in my opinion, some people would be like, "Oh, Marvel does comedy perfectly." I've never necessarily thought that. Some of the jokes are like a little iffy for me, but that was definitely the comedy in this movie overall was pretty good.
Because it doesn't feel forced, and I feel like in this movie there's probably the least amount of comedy of all the movies, because it feels like the comedy's more spread out and it's not as forced and it feels natural.
Yeah. Like, there's a point where they're doing this brainstorming session, and they all get Chinese food, and they're just palling around during that.
Yeah.
And there's a point where one of them's like, hey, wait a minute. If you go back at the right time, there's 3 stones in New York.
Yeah.
So you could call that hanging a lantern on it.
Right.
But
They're also just not, like, in a lot of other movies, they'll be, like, punching someone and then they make a quip, and then they punch someone and then they make another quip, which doesn't really happen in this movie. They let the action just be an epic action scene where they'll have character interactions where they're talking, and then someone might say something funny, but that doesn't really stop the scene. It keeps going.
There's like different movie styles, and one style that you don't really see in superhero movies is like super realistic, which we get a little bit in the beginning, and then towards the end, and then as like you get to the second half of the movie, it's not as much, and it's more theatrical, which is the other type. And I really loved how they had the theatrical moments in this movie. Lines like Captain America saying "Avengers Assemble" or Tony Stark saying "I am Iron Man." Like it's just theatrical, and you could even say over dramatic, but in a good way, like in a way that the fans love.
we're going to get back to that. But Probably my favorite joke was probably Rhodey Rhodey and Nebula watching Star-Lord dance to himself on Morag. Because it goes back to the opening of the first Guardians, which is just this great opening sequence with like Peter dancing to his Walkman and stuff. And because it's a movie, we hear what's going on in his Walkman. And so they recreate part of that scene and then hard cut to just Star-Lord dancing and badly singing to himself. Right. And Rhodey's just like, this is the guy? And yeah, it's pretty good humor.
I just want to go back to something you mentioned before. You just asked about time travel. And I want to say that I give props to the Russo brothers for doing time travel in a way that wasn't too confusing. I think you definitely have to, like little kids won't necessarily be able to follow that if they go to see the movie, but time travel is always hard. When you're making a movie or a show that involves time travel, it either does really good or really bad, and I think they did a really good job with it. They explained it in a pretty good way, and it all worked out nicely.
The only problem I see with this is now there really isn't any reason why. There's no reason at the end of the movie why time travel still isn't a thing. Like at Back to the Future, at the end of Back to the Future, the time machine's destroyed. Mm-hmm. At the end of this, all you need is Pym particles. Oh, yeah. And as long as no one assassinates Hank Pym, time travel is still a valuable option for any scenario.
I wouldn't be surprised, knowing the MCU, to have some sort of quick reference in a future, the next Ant-Man movie. I could see Ant-Man saying something around that's well, why don't we just time travel again? And then Hank Pym would probably explain
Stop
we can't.
The quantum realm.
Yeah,
it's unstable. If we time travel again, it's gonna tear apart, Scott.
Yeah, that's probably what will happen. Yeah. Or I don't know, but
something that has the word quantum in it 15 times.
Right.
I did think it was a little convenient how fast Tony solved time travel.
I mean, he's totally
he is
basically
the smartest.
Okay, in the beginning, when Iron Man first started, it was pushing what realistically you could do with technology. By the time we got to Infinity War, he had nanotechnology. That's
a
really, really, really futuristic. So, it's not. It's surprising that the thing that's surprising about him is how smart he is. I think as his character, we just are supposed to accept that he's a genius. But the fact that he solved time travel, I think we basically as viewers are just supposed to accept the fact that he's probably the smartest person to ever live. So
I also think he was thinking about it for a while because he was talking to Scott about quantum physics and things like that. So I don't know that he just looked at it for 5 seconds and figured it out automatically. I think he might have been thinking about it for a long time.
Yeah. So talked about humor. Talked about callbacks and references. I do like how they use the time travel to give characters some amount of closure. Right. The big ones are Thor getting closure with his mom. It's a really nice scene, because she's suddenly killed in Thor: The Dark World, a movie that not everyone enjoys. But I like how they don't just sort of brush that under the rug. They acknowledge it.
Of the big three, Captain America, Iron Man, and Thor, I think Thor and Iron Man over the span of 10 years have had the most character development within the movies and grown the most and learned the most about themselves and the world around them compared to Steve. I think Steve has as well, but
Thor's definitely grown a bit wider in this movie.
Oh yeah.
I'm not sure. I feel the whole fat jokes they went on a bit too long for my liking.
Yeah, I personally wanted him to just first I thought in the beginning of the movie when he decides to go
it makes complete sense that he just had a mental breakdown.
Yeah.
Because one of the best scenes in Infinity War is when he's talking to Rocket and you see he's on the verge, but he's just revenge. I got to focus on revenge. And then he fails. Mm-hmm. And so it makes complete sense that he has just been drinking himself into hell because he puts this entire situation on himself.
Yeah, just because it's shown through a comedic lens doesn't mean that it doesn't have a dramatic aspect to it, or it doesn't it isn't character development.
But I wish after it had served its purpose with him getting that pep talk from his mom, I wish they would have done something have him magically transform a Stormbreaker.
Yeah,
he should have at least shaved and gotten a haircut for Tony's funeral.
Yeah.
He showed up looking a bit
Even
hobo-ish
on
to the funeral.
Even on the Guardians ship, he comes on and he's still the exact same. Like he's
Yeah.
so tubby and stuff.
Speaking of that, I think we talked about that before as well. We may have saying that Thor being in the Guardians. Even if we didn't, he's a great fit for that group as we saw in Infinity War, and I think he's going to be a great add for Guardians 3. And I'm really happy to see that. And I didn't want to see him go, so I'm glad he didn't die.
Yeah. We also see Tony get closure with his father, and it's a nice callback to Iron Man 2 because it's the same actor playing him.
Mm-hmm.
It would have felt
From
weird
Civil
if
War as well.
it would have felt weird if it was Dominic Cooper. As
Yeah.
much as I love Dominic Cooper's portrayal in First Avenger and the Agent Carter series, this is the one that has the more emotional connection to Tony because of Iron Man 2.
Yeah, and when he was Dominic Cooper, he was so young that he wouldn't have known him. At
Yeah, he
that
was so
point. He would've
snarky.
he would have known John Slattery more.
Yeah. So I like that. Let's see. What else do I have in the notebook? All right, let's talk about Boromir.
Okay.
So all the Avengers go off to retrieve one stone, and Clint and Natasha go off to Boromir to retrieve the Soul Stone. I feel like Nebula should have warned them. Because Nebula knows.
Well, they knew. Clint referenced it, or one of them did. One of them said, "Yeah, someone, yeah, some,
Yeah, Clint
Thanos
said-
went and Gamora didn't come." So they knew.
I think they
Right.
knew. They just didn't want to think about it. They
Right.
just didn't think it through enough for whatever reason.
I was kind of rooting for Hawkeye to live just because of the fact that he has a family.
Right.
It'd be really depressing if he had to sacrifice himself to do that. But man, Black Widow's death is pretty sad though.
It is sad. I mean, since I knew that there a Black Widow movie is on the way, when the moment they arrived at Boromir, I was like, okay, Black Widow's dead, because in a similar sense that they had Han Solo die before he got his own solo movie, no pun intended. Okay. It just makes the character a little more popular, and also she didn't have a family in the same way that Clint did, so
Right.
I think we all knew that she was going to die at that point.
She talked earlier about how the Avengers were her family. And ever since the first Avengers movie, she's been on this mission to she's got red in her ledger, and she wants to balance out the scale. She wants to do something worth doing.
So it finally completes her arc throughout however many movies she's been in.
And I also like how the Red Skull has the same spiel. It's the same exact music from Infinity War when Thanos sacrificed. So it adds to the continuity of Boromir. This is a sacred ritual.
It's almost it's a mirror of the scene that happens in Infinity War with Thanos and Gamora. I wanted to, since we're talking about Black Widow right now, I was thinking about the movie, and just real quick, I want to say my prediction. I don't know if we've talked about this yet, but I feel like I was watching Avengers 1, and I heard the explanation of how she met Clint and how basically she got involved in some bad stuff and then got on S.H.I.E.L.D.'s radar. Clint was sent to kill her, and he spared her and basically allowed her to join S.H.I.E.L.D. I think that's going to be the story for the Black Widow movie. I think
Could be.
I think at the end is when that's gonna be what's happening. In the end, she joins S.H.I.E.L.D. at the end of her movie.
I've been really hoping that it features the Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
Because we know that she
would be
has
cool.
had encounters with him in the past. I think it'd be really cool if he was the antagonist.
Yeah.
Just because we haven't seen too much of villain Bucky, he was the antagonist of Winter Soldier. But it would be cool to see him in his prime when he was doing that.
And they also have a pretty strong relationship in the comics and stuff, which is
Yeah.
worth exploring.
All right. So one of the things that I found really interesting is when all the characters are brought back, Spider-Man says, Mr. Stark, what happened? I blacked out, I wasn't feeling so good, but then I came back, and Doctor Strange was there, and so to me it sounds like for the characters who were dusted, they blacked out, but then we're back. To them it was an instantaneous thing. So I really hope that future movies explore the dynamic between people who got dusted and people who did not. Because let's say that Thanos snapped, Jalen was dusted and I survived.
What about Austin?
Okay, this is one analogy. But so, and then the reverse snap happens. Jalen comes back. To Jalen, it's just been a really weird Tuesday. But to me, it's been like 5 years, haven't seen Jalen in 5 years. Every conversation would just be like, man, really missed you, man.
I was thinking about that as well. Like, I don't know, they could expand upon it in comics or shows, but 5 years is a long time, and I have to imagine a lot happened in those. Like, it's hard for me to believe, knowing, like, what happens in the MCU, that no, like, supervillain popped up in those 5 years. Like,
They were all dusted.
I mean, that probably did happen. They just didn't reference it in the movie necessarily. I mean, Clint was handling a lot of stuff around the world, as well as Captain Marvel was doing a lot, and War Machine and Nebula, all of them, and Rocket, they were all handling
It seemed
things.
like Natasha was like micromanaging the world that was left.
Yeah. Or the Avengers that were left, essentially.
Yeah.
They were the Avengers. So, I don't know. I'd be interested to see, like, more details about what happened in those 5 years.
I hope they sort of explore this in Spider-Man Far From Home, because it seems like Ned wasn't dusted.
Yeah, I thought about that too. And I saw him, and me and Jeff talked after the movie, and we feel like he has to have been dusted because he looks the same. And if you're a teenager and 5 years later, you won't look the same. Like, certain people look the same. I was thinking about, like, Aunt May, for example. She will look for the most part the same, because if you're an adult, you're gonna 5 years later, for the most part, you're gonna look the same. If you're a teenager, your aging is gonna be more dramatic. So 5 years later, you're gonna look very different. So if Ned wasn't dusted in the snap, then
Maybe he moisturizes.
maybe he moisturizes. If he wasn't dusted in the snap, then that's kind of a plot hole, and I hope that doesn't happen.
It doesn't have to be Spider-Man and Ned. I just think it's a really interesting dynamic that's worth exploring. And also, oh yeah, reunions. There were a lot of great reunions, but to me the standout was Ant-Man and his daughter.
Yeah, that was really
Just
good.
the first 20 minutes are a real downer, real depressing, and it's nice to have just like a genuinely sweet moment before things sort of like ramp up into superhero mode. Okay, so we talked about time travel. Okay, I think it's time that we have to talk about Tony's death. So, Iron Man dies.
Yes.
But he goes out in what is probably the best way. His final words are, I am Iron Man. And then he snaps. Thanos and his entire army disappear. He has a nice little moment of solidarity with Rhodey where they just kind of nod to each other. Peter and him like say goodbye, and then him and Pepper says something to him like, you saved us, you can rest now.
Yeah.
And then we
like
see
basically giving him permission to die.
yeah. And then we see his arc reactor go out, and that's when the tears started.
Yeah.
Like, cuz
What really got me in that scene actually was when Peter was saying goodbye to Tony, and he was like really tearing up and basically sobbing. That's what really got me.
It was a reverse of the scene we saw in Infinity War, which was very touching.
Yeah.
yeah. And they handled his death like so well in my opinion, because just as soon as he would start to calm down, you would see something else that'd like make you emotional. Like you see his arc reactor floating, and they put like his arc reactor on a wreath in his funeral. It's the one from Iron Man where it's like proof Tony Stark has a heart, and you're like, oh, that's sad. And then you see the kid from Iron Man 3 all grown up, and then you're sad again. And then you see Rhodey talking to his daughter, and he's like, they're just trying to make small talk, and he's like, oh, are you hungry? And she's like,
I mean, Happy talking to
sorry,
his daughter.
who did I say?
You said Rhodey.
Rhodey, sorry. Yeah, Happy. And she's like, I want some cheeseburgers. And you see Rhodey pause, and it's just a callback.
Said Rhodey again. It's
I'm
Happy,
sorry,
Jeffrey.
It's Happy. Happy. John Favreau, the director of Iron Man. But so, that's just a callback to, again, Iron Man 1, where it all started. As soon as Tony gets back from Afghanistan, he gets Burger King.
Yeah, he's like, all I want is an American cheeseburger.
Yeah, and so it's like little moments like that. It just gets you, man.
I have to give props. I mean, because it's the culmination of a lot of the stars of each movie, there's some really high-level acting in this movie. What made me think about it is you were talking about the scene when Tony is dying, and Gwyneth Paltrow's performance there I thought was really, really good. Like, she almost seems like content. It's not as like so much distraught because she's content with the fact that she's almost proud of him, but sad to see him go. And it's really like it was just that's what got me in that scene. And then just the acting throughout the movie. When Tony first gets back on Earth and he is really mad and he's talking to the Avengers, especially Steve, and like that, I thought the acting there was so impressive. Like, it was really well done. Like, you can feel his frustration.
And I think they sort of set up Tony's death early on. Because if you think about Iron Man's whole arc throughout this MCU, it's just been him bettering himself, him going one step above. That's why he's always building another suit. He's constantly trying to, like, push past the limits. He would never stop. And that's why you couldn't have him retire like some other characters. Earlier in the movie, when he cracks time travel, he's talking to Pepper and he's like, part of me wants to just throw in a lockbox, chuck it in the lake, and go to bed. And she says to him, but could you rest? And that really hits home at Tony's character. It's like how in Iron Man 3, when he just wasn't sleeping, he was just building Iron Man suits. He would always have that drive to keep being Iron Man. There's no way he could ever just retire.
Yeah, I was talking to someone else who we saw the movie with, and he was frustrated, and he's like, why did he have to die? Why couldn't he just have retired? And I said a very similar thing. Like, he couldn't retire. He would be working to the day he died if he died of old age. Right. And so yeah, it was very fitting for him to like unlock time travel and then wield the power of like the universe basically, to see him escalate to that point, and then that be when he passes away.
Yeah. Speaking of retirement, the movie actually ends on Captain America retiring. He goes off to return the stones back to their place in time. And the way time travel works in this movie is someone leaves, they spend as much time as they need, but they always return to like 5 seconds after they left. And so we see Hulk and Bucky and Sam send him off. 5 seconds later, he doesn't come back. Hulk's freaking out, Sam's freaking out, and Bucky's just like, hey, look over there. Pans to an old man sitting on a bench. Sam goes over to talk to him, and it looks like Clint Eastwood.
It did kind of look like Clint Eastwood.
But yeah, so Captain America decided to like live a life in memory of Tony. He says, I decided to live that life Tony was always talking about. And he passes on the mantle of Captain America to sorry.
Oh my
Sam.
God.
I don't know why I keep saying Rhodey.
To Sam.
Yeah, to Sam. To Falcon. And so that's setting up their Disney Plus series, I assume.
Right.
But the movie ends on him and Peggy Carter finally getting that dance. And it's the same violin music that was, or it's the same kind of music that was playing in his vision in Age of Ultron. So it's finally bringing that to a close. The thing he never thought he could have, he finally gets it. And that's when the tears came back. Because it's just so, like, genuine and sweet. And
that was something, I don't know if we talked about it. I did, I think I saw something online, and I also predicted it. I was saying how that he would end up living his life with Peggy, and I said, before I saw the movie, I said, if that happens, that's going to be a tearjerker. That's going to be a genuine tearjerker. And, yeah, it definitely
it's nice that he got a happy ending.
It was very nice, yes.
In a movie where very few did, it's nice that he got one. So, I think that pretty much wraps up everything we wanted to talk about. I'm just going to read some responses. Put out a question earlier about what were your favorite moments from Avengers Endgame on Instagram. Believe in Yourself _06 says, Ant-Man should have gone up Thanos' ass. That is a bit of a disappointment.
That was.
I don't think I was disappointed by that at all.
It would have been funny if he had at least referenced it. That would
A genuine disappointment I felt was that Nebula didn't get to kill Thanos. Because I feel like she was the most deserving. She's suffered the most directly at his hand. A big part of this movie is her past self coming into conflict with her former self. And it's like a metaphor for her character development. So it would have been nice for her to have been able to do that.
I thought it was either going to be Tony or Nebula. I was like, no way, it's not one of them. Because I feel like Tony started it all, and Nebula has the most like connection to him.
Ethan.Duang says, the attention to detail from past movies. So yeah, like we talked about, all the little moments when they're time traveling, all the things that connect it back. J_Wanger19 says, Spider-Man meeting up with Iron Man. So heartwarming. Yeah, they have a really nice reunion where Spider-Man's just like talking about all that happens, and Tony just hugs him. Mm-hmm. It's really nice. It's a nice.
Also, in the beginning of the movie, when Tony gets off the ship and is talking to Steve, and he says, "I lost a kid," was like a really heartbreaking moment because he says it's like Robert Downey Jr. acts that so well that you feel the emotion.
Right.
Speaking of kids, though, Tony's daughter.
What about her, Bryon?
I mean, he's leaving a kid behind. You know, there's a lot.
That's just really sad.
There's a lot. You're a terrible human being. There's a lot that Tony could have taught her, and that's kind of depressing to see like Tony's daughter left behind. Like not saying Pepper's not capable of taking care of a child or anything, but like having Tony as a dad would have been very cool. Also, the scene where she's coming out of the tent and she has the Iron Man mask on was
the rescue mask on.
Yeah.
It was those moments with him as a father were very sweet. Mm-hmm. Where he's like giving her popsicles and stuff, and accidentally saying shit in front of her. It's like, shh, don't tell mom. It's just nice, real stuff, and it perfectly explains his hesitation to time travel.
Yeah,
and he makes it very clear from the start. It's like, if we get the stones, we're just bringing everyone back. We're not changing anything, because he plainly says his priority is keeping what he has. All right, Ruski_Joe says, Stark's funeral and finding out Cap lived a good life, sobbing for sure. Again, real tearjerkers. And Anna.JB27 says, when Thanos tried to headbutt Carol and she didn't even flinch.
Yeah, that was really good.
That's some big dick energy. It is, though. That is a pretty great moment.
That is really
I
good.
felt Captain Marvel was used pretty well in this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were smart. For those of you that don't know, they shot Avengers Endgame first before Captain Marvel. They didn't even have a script yet for that movie. So the actress, she didn't really know exactly what to do with the character at the time. It was all her, she was kind of just thrown into the mix of things. So props to her. She did a great job, as well as they were smart to not include her too much. So,
Right.
Yeah.
She's in the start, disappears for a while, and she reappears during the final battle in just like the best way possible. Like, there's missiles firing at everyone on the battlefield, then suddenly all the missiles start firing up. I thought they were, like, attacking the city, and they'd be forced to, like, choose to fight Thanos or save the city. But no, they're firing at something that has entered the upper atmosphere, and then you just see Captain Marvel pinwheel through Thanos' ship, bringing it down, and it's just amazing.
Yeah.
One thing I was thinking about after the movie, so you know how Cap has in Civil War kind of has this like small little romantic relationship with
Right.
Yes.
Peggy's granddaughter?
No, that's not her granddaughter,
Great
that's her niece.
Oh, that's her niece.
Great
Yeah.
niece.
Okay.
So it's
well,
like,
now
and-
it's become incest technically.
No, it really hasn't, because that's like, it's no. Wait, it's Peggy's one of Peggy's siblings' kids.
It's definitely very
It's weird. It was weird at the moment.
because the theory is that because if he went back, he would have split off into his own universe. But it sounds like that when he went back, it's still the same universe. It's just that the man that Peggy married was always Steve, so there are two Steves. So it is, and then they might have kids or anything.
I wonder.
So it
Okay.
might have been.
I
But no,
wonder
it's
if.
Peggy's.
Okay.
Agent Carter, the series, establishes that Peggy has siblings,
Yes.
and so the fact that Sharon is her niece sort of established.
It's still blood
So-
relation.
I wonder.
He married into the family, though. Isn't it?
yeah.
If you're
it
related,
is.
you're
If
related.
related.
But
I've been watching too much Game of Thrones. This
Yeah,
is weird.
it's
But
it's not,
I do like how they tried that in Civil War saw just like the absolute rejection that everyone in the audience had and was like, okay.
Which is weird because like comic book fans, like that's a long established relationship. Sharon Carter, like it's been a thing for decades in the comics. And
What
then
if
general audiences really?
But yeah, in the movies, it's just his neighbor that lied to him that one time.
I like what you said about the idea about there's two Caps. I think that's an interesting thought. Like, what if the whole time, because when Cap first comes back from the ice, he goes to visit her. He goes to visit Peggy, and then she seems like surprised to see him and stuff. But what if at that point she had already grown up with him and had been told
Well, that's
by?
because she has dementia.
Yeah, I think she just has dementia, so she's like she doesn't know what's happening.
Oh, okay.
That
Gotcha.
or she's just lying.
Yeah.
She's a
So
spy,
do you think that
secrets.
version of Peggy grew up with Cap?
I don't know. See, that's...
I think so.
I think so. I think so, and I think
think
he made sure that
that
he stayed off the radar so that it didn't affect the timeline.
I think there were always two Caps, like throughout the entire MCU. There were always.
I think he made sure not to get involved in any of the world
stuff, but he knows there's another one of him.
So we know that Disney Plus, one of the things they're doing is Disney Plus What If series and a Loki series. A part of me really wants them to just combine those and be the what if Loki, the what if of this Loki, because in this movie Loki gets the Tesseract and he just bounces. He's just out of there.
Right.
So I want to see what that Loki's up to.
That might be what the Loki show is. I don't know. It could be. They could just do an alternate universe.
They literally have like hundreds of years of space to fill. So
yeah.
Just going back to Captain Marvel real quick, it's funny. One of the things that we said, and a lot of people said, is there better be a good reason that Captain Marvel and Thor don't just kill Thanos within the first 5 minutes. And there isn't. They just did.
Yeah, they just did.
They literally just show up to his house and kill him. Mm-hmm. So, again, one of the things we were worried about is Captain Marvel too overpowered? Not necessarily. When she's written well, it's good. Mm-hmm. But so, yeah. Any final thoughts, reactions, hopes for the future of the MCU?
Oh, that's a good point. So a big topic after this is how does Marvel top this? And I think we should be patient. We got to wait 10 years to see if they can top this. As well as it doesn't need to be topped. It can just be great and doesn't have to have something greater. But we have things to look forward to. There was the merger, so we have the X-Men. Like that's probably the biggest thing. The X-Men and the Fantastic Four are coming to the MCU. That adds a lot of content, a lot of options for characters to use in the future. So I think we have a lot to look forward to. The Black Widow movie, sequels to like Doctor Strange, Black Panther, Spider-Man, so on, Guardians, so on and so forth. So I think we still have. It's not all over, guys. We may have been in the Endgame for the Infinity Saga, but we've got. I'm sure Kevin Feige has plenty of ideas in his head for the future of Marvel.
So now that Thanos has been decapitated and dusted, who do you want to be the next big bad?
I want Kang the Conqueror to be the next.
Bringing time travel. Maybe he notices something about sets his sight on Earth because he noticed the time travel.
That would be cool.
That's what I was thinking. Like if they set up, because they didn't really set up anything for a next big villain or anything in this movie.
And I'm glad they didn't.
Yeah,
there wouldn't have been enough time.
And I was thinking it would be cool if like since they were time traveling, he like notices they mess something up, or he notices that time travel is happening, so he uses that to his advantage and manipulates it or something.
What I liked is that what Rocket said, that there was a huge energy signature on Earth when Thanos snapped. So I have to imagine that's going to put some focus from other worlds on Earth.
Right.
So I also think for a future Avengers movie, maybe not like the big bad, maybe like just the next or the I don't know. I just think the Skrulls should be an enemy in one of the Avengers movies. I think
they will be.
Yeah, because they didn't use Skrulls like they did in the comics typically, and I think that's like the idea of shapeshifters allows for a lot of cool storytelling, and I think that they definitely should utilize that.
And it plays perfectly into the MCU because there have been this like past 10 years of characters getting to know each other and getting to like trust each other. So that's one of the things that made Secret Invasion, the main comic with the Skrulls, so like impactful is you don't know who to trust, even though these are people you fought beside for years. Mm-hmm. There's that history, and it's the history that the MCU has now because it's been around for the past 10 years.
They could definitely do some sort of storyline where, so we see at the end of Captain Marvel that she saves the Skrulls and she's goes off into space with them. But what if there's a scenario where there's a story of one Skrull who was like lost at birth or something like that, or not even lost at birth, but just was disconnected from the main group, and for the last 10 or technically now 15 years has been on Earth, and maybe that's a villain. I think that could be a cool like villain origin story, and just believes that like
Maybe
humans.
it's General Ross.
Yeah.
This is my right. This is the hill I'm going to die on. That General Ross is a Skrull.
I don't know about that.
I saw a thing on a podcast once where, well, I listened to it. Nando V Movies pointed out that if they had killed Talos in Captain Marvel, it'd be like the perfect villain backstory for his daughter to like hate humans and the Kree and stuff like that.
Yeah, true.
But they didn't, so. Yeah. Alright. So, Infinity Saga has come to an end. These are movies that we have spent the past 10 years of our lives watching, the past God knows how many lunch periods talking about. What's some of your favorite moments from it all? One of mine is just this little interaction in Avengers Age of Ultron. It's during the Stan Lee cameo when Thor's pouring like his aged Asgardian mead, and he's like, "This was aged in the hull of an Asgardian ship for 1,000 years. It is not meant for mortal men." And he says that line as he's handing a glass to Captain America. It's just a great little character moment to show the massive amount of respect and camaraderie that Thor has for Captain America.
I have to say, I just love the first Avengers, and particularly the moment when they assemble in New York, and there's the camera shot where it's spinning around, and Iron Man's landing, and Black Widow loads her pistol, and Hawkeye gets his bow ready, and or he draws his bow, and then the moment where Hulk is just says,
Screaming.
Screaming, and also right before that he says he's always angry, like that whole like sequence right there, and then Cap giving them the directions, and he tells Hulk to smash, like that was, I think that was just amazing to me. As I was 11 when it came out, and when I saw it, and now I'm 18. I just still look back and have so much nostalgia, and just that was the first time as a kid that I realized that something like that could happen, and I think that was the moment that I became an MCU fanboy, because before that I thought the movies were cool, but that was the moment where I was like, whoa, like the possibilities that could happen, and then now to basically see all those possibilities reach a finale. It was just everything I ever dreamed of, honestly, leading up to this point.
I think the two moments that really stick out to me are character moments. So like one of them is in Age of Ultron at the end, where Vision is talking to Ultron, the last Ultron bot, and he's basically saying like, Ultron's saying like the humans are doomed, and Ultron's like, yeah, they are, but beautiful things aren't beautiful because they last.
The thing isn't beautiful because it lasts.
Right, and I think that's
There's
a really
a grace
good character
in their
development.
failings. I think you missed that.
There you go. And then the other one is in Doctor Strange when the Agent One is dying, and she goes into her astral projection form, and Doctor Strange follows her, and they're basically having a character moment where Doctor Strange finally realizes like his arc is kind of coming to a close, and he's really realizing like the lesson of it. It's not about him, that he has to use his powers to help other people.
Logan actually said one of my favorite moments. Thanks, Logan.
No problem.
About Age of Ultron, and at the very end with them talking to Vision. And most of my favorite moments are the little instances where it involves like the real world, like a part in Spider-Man when they're doing construction on New York City, and what's his name? I keep forgetting.
Vulture?
The villain, Vulture, and the origins of Vulture, and how the MCU affects the wide range of the entire world. As also in Civil War, when Wanda's forced to throw someone up close to a hospital so that everyone else doesn't get blown up, and it blows up part of the hospital, and you see how they affect the outside world, and it's not just people who are superheroes and beings, everything's just fixed as soon as they fight. It's affecting everyone else around them. And that's what I think is really important that the MCU has brought to life. And it's mostly consistent not with the MCU, but it's more consistent in, like the DC universe, the dark ideas. And I think it's really good that the MCU has done that throughout the entire series. And those are some of my favorite moments from it.
Another two of mine are both from Guardians 2. There's one where Drax is talking to Mantis, and out of all the characters in the MCU, Drax is probably the most comedic. He's the least serious. That's the thing that the MCU is most criticized for. So there's a bit where he's talking to Mantis, like about his origin, about his wife and stuff. And Mantis has the ability to touch someone and know how they're feeling, like to experience those feelings for herself. And we see Drax just sort of like staring off, smiling, and Mantis puts her hand on his shoulder and she just starts bawling. So it really shows that underneath all like the humor and stuff, Drax is really like feeling a lot. He's a deeper character than we had thought. And the other is right at the end with Yondu's death and like his funeral sequence.
Again?
No,
Yondu's
we're talking
death.
about the Guardians of the Galaxy movie.
Yeah, Marvel, they do funerals pretty good in these movies. But it's like little moments, like seeing how excited Kraglin is when the other Ravagers show up, and like the song in the background. The Guardians have this really nice, genuine moment as a family. It's really sweet.
It was Fosnot. Yeah.
At what song?
The song with his funeral.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I remember that.
Yeah, I was also going to say another scene that I really, really liked was the end of Civil War with Iron Man fighting the Winter Soldier and Captain America. That was the visuals on that were really, really cool, and it had a lot of emotion to back it up, which always creates the best action when you have good story to back it up. And also, I really love the line from that movie where Cap looks at Tony and almost like he feels like he's pushed in a corner and he says, "He's my friend, Tony," and then Tony says, "So was I." Like that's one of my favorite lines in all of the MCU.
So anything else you guys want to talk about before we head out?
I think that's it for now.
Quick question for you guys: who do you think had the best origin story out of everyone in the MCU? Who is the best?
Iron Man.
Agreed. Iron Man.
Probably
I think
Iron Man.
I recently rewatched the original Iron Man. I think it's still the best origin movie. In
The fact
MCU.
that it still holds up.
it holds up really well.
Yeah.
I think
There's a reason it launched a cinematic universe.
this doesn't necessarily. Who do you think? Which team had a better origin story, Guardians or Avengers?
Avengers.
I'm gonna go Guardians.
Okay,
Just for
I
the
feel
fact,
I feel like
for the
it's
fact that they were able to like contain it in one movie.
That's what I was gonna say.
And
Avengers has an unfair
there's
advantage.
such conflicting personalities on that team.
Yeah.
And the fact that they start out the movie just basically all hating each other and being at each other's throats, for them to come together as a family towards the end.
Guardians is impressive that it does all that by creating a team in one movie, making you care about each and every character, and at the end, the "We Are Groot" moment, that's impressive that they actually made that feel like you don't feel like it's too corny. Like it feels relatively emotional, and to do that in one movie is impressive. James Gunn did a good job with that.
So, who is your favorite Avenger? Or just not Avenger, but anyone in the MCU?
After this movie, especially, I really like Ant-Man. Like, it just reinforces how much I like Ant-Man. Each movie I see Doctor Strange in, I like him more and more. Yeah.
Mine's still Thor.
Yeah.
Just for the journey that he's been on and the journey he's going to go on.
I have to go with Iron Man, because I really like how he stands out as more flawed than a lot of the other characters, and I like that about characters. He doesn't. Yeah, he's just very flawed in his personality, and he's unforgiving about it. He's just who he is, and he doesn't care what people think, and I love that, and I'm impressed by him with the growth he's made, not only in terms of like physical power, but just his character as well overall the movies. And then I would say Captain America side by side with him, pretty much.
Well,
Yeah.
it's been a hell of a ride, guys.
Yes,
It really has been.
Yeah.
Get out.
I just feel very lucky to have been able to be growing up at the same time these movies have been coming out. Logan, you made a really good point on Instagram yesterday that if Infinity War is this generation's Empire Strikes Back, then Endgame is this generation's Return of the King.
Yeah.
And it's just, really, people will look back at the cinematic universe and be able to just watch it all in one 3-day go. But I feel like it really Endgame meant more to us because we had to wait a year. Because there were the anticipation of it, the event of it.
I mean,
I just feel very lucky for having been able to experience that.
I agree with you, Jeff, but you said we had to wait a year, but we had this announced back in 2014? 2015?
Very true.
2014.
So I feel like I've been waiting for this for a long time. And
Very
we had
true.
Thanos tease at the end of Avengers. So in my opinion, I've been waiting for this since I was 11 years old. So
Yeah, honestly.
Yeah. And they stuck the landing.
they stuck the
stuck the
landing.
landing.
It's wow, just great in every way. I want to say thanks to all of our listeners, especially our frequent ones. Special shout out to Mr. Zeno. He's our AP literature teacher from our junior year of high school, and he did a really good job of just helping us out, set up everything, and get started. So thank you to him. Anyone else you guys want to give shout outs to?
Again, thanks to the listeners. And thank you to Austin Nigro. He is the unsung hero of 7 Studio Ave. He's our producer. You might hear his whispers occasionally in the background of the episode, but he's the one that has put this podcast together. This started as just a conversation of what if we started a podcast. But Austin really went out. He took the time to research all the equipment and the different networks and stuff, and we just show up and talk into microphones. But Austin is the glue that holds 7 Studio Ave together.
Shout out.
Without him, there is no 7 Studio Ave.
Also, shout out to all the people who appeared in the podcast ever. Some of our guests include Maddie Mullaney, Tyler Murray, and some of our regular hosts couldn't be here, but I want to shout them out as well. Brandon Gaffney, Samuel Cason, and Joey Carr. They've participated in the podcast several times before, so I want to thank them for that.
I'm glad that we were able to end this on a high note with Endgame. I don't know what else to say.
I know what to say.
Neo fell asleep that first episode.
Oh, we had one of our friends during our first episode fall asleep in the room, so...
Yeah, he was audibly
Gotta love
snoring.
him.
Audibly snoring.
All right.
And I just remember trying to talk increasingly louder to drown out both his snoring and Sam's laughter.
Yeah, good times. All right, so it doesn't really hold up at this point, but I feel like we should still say it in honor.
Ceremony at this point.
Yep. See you in 7.
See you in 7.
See you in 7.
See you in 7.